The moment that always sticks out, July 14th, 2:47 a.m. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, wrapped in a hoodie that smelled like burnt coffee and exhaustion, half eating cold lasagna out of the container while my laptop blasted heat onto my legs. That was the night I pushed the final build into staging for the Henderson project. 2 years of back-end logic, integration pipelines, error handling gymnastics, and late-night bug hunts, all humming together like a gospel choir made of duct tape and JavaScript. It worked. It finally worked, and nobody saw it. Nobody but me, because I wasn't the person who got invited to strategic alignment calls or fancy lunches with the client. I was technical support, the polite term they slap on you when they need you to keep the machine running but don't want you speaking in public. My boss, Heather, the director of solutions delivery, wore power blazers and called herself a thought leader. Her biggest contribution to the project? A Trello card that said make it seamless winking face and a monthly status update email she copy-pasted from my daily logs. 2 years I gave that platform. Not worked on, gave. Sacrificed weekends, missed birthdays, and even coded through COVID with a fever of 101. It wasn't about glory. It was about building something that mattered. The Henderson client was massive. If their logistics system went down for even an hour, it cost them 6 figures. What I built would make their operations bulletproof. But I wasn't even on the list of names for the final presentation. Heather said it would just be confusing for the client to hear from multiple people. That was the first gut punch. But I didn't complain. Because when you're the type who triple checks commit messages and lint errors for fun, you're used to being invisible. You're the human version of a firewall, only noticed when things go wrong. By the way, if you're still listening, first of all, thank you. And second, do us a solid, tap the subscribe button and drop a like. It's the best kind of caffeine for our whole team. We're like gremlins, but with burnout and bad posture, your support keeps us going. Anyway, I stayed quiet, nodded through Heather's "We've got this" pep talk, didn't flinch when she said she'd be rebranding our project as Aurora Flow, which I'm pretty sure she got off a yoga mat. And when I passed her in the hallway printing out slides with diagrams I literally designed, labeled with her name at the footer, I just smiled. The kind of smile you give when you know exactly where the bodies are buried, because you dug the graves yourself. Still, part of me hoped naively that maybe, just maybe, I'd get a nod. A quiet thank you. Something. Instead, I got a 3 a.m. Slack message, added my notes to the deck. Final version locked. Big day tomorrow, grinning face with smiling eyes. Her notes? She changed the font to Comic Sans on one of my charts. I am not kidding, but the code was mine. Every line, every decision tree, every rollback handler. I built redundancy layers that could survive a nuclear winter. I used my GitHub like a diary, documented everything, timestamped, versioned. Annotated, not for glory, for sanity, because if anything ever went wrong, I wanted the truth to be traceable. Still, I didn't expect this to go wrong. I didn't expect the thing I built to be handed off like a plate of cookies while I sat in the back of the room, silent, nodding, disposable. But that part's coming. First, there was the calm. The quiet hours before the betrayal. The part where I kept my head down, coded like my rent depended on it, it did, and told myself that good work eventually gets seen. I was wrong. It started as a whisper around the office. Well, the Slack channel, which was the office ever since remote, became permanent. People started dropping phrases like "big pitch next week" and "the Henderson execs are flying in." I even caught a "we might be on the cusp of something huge" from Greg in marketing, which meant he'd probably gotten wind of something on a Zoom call he wasn't even supposed to be in. I checked the calendar, expecting to see my invite. Nothing. No meeting, no prep call, no document review. Just a block of gray time labeled Henderson Solution Review C-Level only. That's when my stomach dropped. My solution, my architecture. My entire damned life for the past 24 months, and I wasn't even on the guest list. So I did what any rational human being running on spite and Celsius would do. I DM'd Heather. Hey, saw the Henderson review on the calendar. Do you need me to prep talking points or walk through the system overview? Her reply came back faster than her usual "seen 6 hours ago" vibe. No need. I've got it covered. Smiling face with smiling eyes, just keep the infra steady in case they want to peek under the hood later. Got it covered. Like she was doing me a favor, letting me watch the Titanic launch from the dock. I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard, and typed half a dozen different responses, each more sarcastic than the last, before deleting them all and settling on, "Roger that." And then I stared at my wall for 27 straight minutes. You know that feeling when you stub your toe and your whole body tenses like you just got electrocuted? That, but in my soul. The next day, Heather posted in the team channel, "Exciting stuff ahead. Can't share all the details yet, but leadership's aligning around the solution pitch. Huge moment for all of us, party popper all of us." Interesting choice of words for someone who just locked me out of my own brainchild. I scrolled past it without reacting. If I reacted, I'd lose. That's how people like Heather win. They get you to self-destruct while they stay poised in their Banana Republic blazers, sipping turmeric lattes and calling it vision. But privately, I couldn't sit still. My gut felt like it had swallowed a cactus. So I pinged Raj from DevOps. He always had ears everywhere like a bloodhound in cargo shorts. Hey, you hear anything about the Henderson pitch? He replied, Yup. Heard Heather's doing the full demo walkthrough. PowerPoint plus live clicks. Your stuff. You in on it? I sent back a smiley just to avoid typing a death threat. The worst part? Everyone assumed I was in on it. Because how could someone not include the lead engineer in a client walkthrough of their own system? It didn't make sense. It defied logic. Unless, of course, you were Heather. She didn't like sharing credit. She liked to translate tech into business language, which was her excuse for copy-pasting my Jira tickets into a Word doc and pretending she wrote it on the back of a cocktail napkin. I watched her Slack status go from in a meeting to on a call to AFK over the next couple days. She was rehearsing. I knew it, rehearsing my demo. Practicing the cadence, the slides, the jargon she barely understood. I bet she even memorized my debugging anecdotes, funny little glitch in the warehouse queuing logic, like she'd lived it, like she'd fixed it. Meanwhile, I sat in the background, invisible, like the IT version of a ghostwriter, haunting the machine, but never credited on the cover. Every time I refreshed the shared drive, I saw new versions of the deck being saved. Not one of them had my name in the footer. Not one listed me as point of contact. The diagrams were still mine, though I could tell by the dumb little Easter eggs I'd left in the node names. One backend cluster was labeled Dwight Schrute's Beats. Another, Thanos Snap Protocol. She hadn't even noticed, just lifted them wholesale. I sent her one last message. Just let me know if you need any support materials or notes. Her reply, all good. Let's cross our fingers, crossed fingers, big day ahead. And just like that, I was out, not fired, not sidelined by policy, just deleted, like a variable someone no longer needed. 3 days before the meeting, I stayed late on a call helping Raj untangle a rogue autoscaling bug that was nuking server logs during off-peak hours. Finally squashed it around 8:30 p.m. And as I closed out the session, a ping came through from our shared Zoom account. Not my personal one, the shared company one we all had access to because Heather kept forgetting to change the default settings. Curiosity 1, I clicked it. Heather was screen sharing, rehearsing her pitch. Alone, camera on, voice warm, polished, fake, like she was auditioning for a TED talk at a conference she wasn't smart enough to understand. And there it was, my deck, my diagrams, my architecture. The colored blocks I spent hours labeling so even the marketing goblins could follow the logic. She was saying my words, word for word. Down to the casual joke I had used in a brown bag once. We modeled warehouse inventory logic on squirrel hoarding patterns, chaotic but accurate. She didn't even know what that meant, but she said it, with confidence. With that little head tilt she used when she thought she was being charming. And then she did something that almost made me laugh, in that way you laugh at a car accident when your body doesn't know how else to process it. She paused mid-sentence to sip her coffee and said aloud to herself, God, I'm good. No irony, no shame, just pure delusional self-congratulation. I took a screenshot, not because I needed proof, because I needed to feel real in that moment, like I wasn't having a dissociative break from watching a woman plagiarize my career in real time. The deck she used had the watermark cropped. I always signed my work with a barely visible footer in Helvetica, system design compiled by my name. Hers was gone, scrubbed clean, all those late nights. The production patch I pushed from the ER waiting room when my little brother got food poisoning. The Thanksgiving I spent in a WeWork, eating cold stuffing from a paper plate while Jenkins ran a build I wasn't sure would hold. All of it, all of me, disguised behind her botox and buzzwords. And you know what broke me more than the theft? She looked proud. She believed she'd earned it, like parroting back my solution at a whiteboard made her the mother of invention. I didn't cry, not even close. I felt something harder, something heavier. I felt done, not in a dramatic way, not in a burn-it-all-down way. Just finished, like I'd reached the end of a long hallway and there was no door. Just drywall, no way out. She ended the rehearsal with a smile and said, that's the flow, that's the win. And for her it probably was, the performance, the credit, the applause she thought was coming. I closed the laptop. Sat there staring into the dark of my apartment, lit only by the glow of a half-drunk Red Bull and my monitor's fan noise. Rage pulsed somewhere beneath the surface. It didn't explode, it calcified, it became structure. I started thinking in variables because I couldn't stop her head on. I couldn't demand credit. I just looked like the bitter engineer no one remembers at promotion time, but I had something better, a breadcrumb trail, a truth I'd been unconsciously laying out for months. Public repos, commit logs, version notes, all timestamped, all indisputable. I didn't have power, but I had proof, and soon. The right person would see it, not because I screamed, but because I set the stage so well they'd trip over the truth all on their own. I kept my mouth shut. That was the hardest part. Every instinct in me wanted to call her out, drag her by the lanyard into the nearest Slack channel, and go full scorched earth. But that would have been a performance. Heather lived for performances. She was counting on me to break, to make it messy, to cry or rage or storm into the boardroom and scream. She stole it, so I didn't. I played it her way. I let her think I was too passive to fight. Let her write her own downfall in Comic Sans, but I had a plan. Monday morning, 2 days before the big meeting, I drafted an email. Not dramatic, not accusatory, just helpful. Neutral. The kind of email people skim on their phones between lattes and deliverables. Object, additional documentation, Aurora Flow architecture overview body. Hi Nathan, hope your team's having a smooth start to the week. Thought this might be useful ahead of Wednesday's walkthrough. Just sharing a public GitHub repo where we've been tracking architecture notes, logic patterns, and evolution over time. Nothing sensitive, just good context if you're curious. Cheers, my name, no accusations. No claims, just a breadcrumb. A digital paper trail, tied neatly with a bow. If he clicked it and that was the gamble, he'd see 2 years of commits, all under my username, all dated, all publicly accessible. Documentation, diagrams, test runs, bug fixes, and even early concept sketches with timestamps proving authorship. Every contribution, every pivot, every late-night lightbulb commit logged in UTC. I sat there after hitting send, heart doing that uneven thud-thud skip thing it always does when I pretend to be braver than I am, because it might not work. Nathan, the CTO, was sharp, sure, but he was also busy. Guys like him didn't always read emails from people like me. I wasn't high enough on the org chart to make his radar. For all I knew, my note would die in the promotions tab, never opened, buried under invites to SAW conferences and networking drinks. But I had to try. I watched the scene by status in Gmail like it was a life monitor. 24 hours, no open. 48 hours, still nothing. By Tuesday night, I'd convinced myself I'd wasted my shot, that maybe Heather would get away with it, that maybe I was the ghost she wanted me to be, nameless, silent, a footnote in her LinkedIn victory lap. But I kept showing up, logged into the team Slack, sent in the daily updates, acted like nothing was wrong, even helped Heather test her Zoom audio Tuesday evening when she couldn't figure out how to screen share without that stupid gray bar. She called me a lifesaver. I smiled and said anytime. I had no idea if my safety net was even holding. I tried to sleep Tuesday night, but my brain kept chewing on the same question. What if he doesn't care? Because that was the other risk. Even if he saw it, what if he didn't care? What if this was just business to him? What if Heather's pitch was enough and no one gave a damn about the invisible engineer behind the curtain? I stared at my phone until 2:17 a.m., when I finally passed out with a pillow over my head and the GitHub repo still open on my screen. Last commit, optimize retry logic for warehouse sync. Timestamp 3 weeks ago. Author, me. No applause, no medals, just quiet code, quiet proof. The meeting was tomorrow, and all I had was a silent truth buried in a repository. I didn't know if it was enough, but it was all I had. The morning of the meeting felt like the seconds before a plane crash. That eerie quiet where everything's technically still fine, but you know the engine's already on fire and the captain's about to announce that you should brace for impact. I was in early, too early, logged in by 6:42 a.m., nerves pinging like corrupted RAM. I didn't need to be there. Technically, Heather had made that abundantly clear. But I told her I'd stay online in case there were any technical snags. Translation: in case you crash and burn trying to explain an architecture you don't understand, I'll be the invisible seatbelt that saves your ass. The meeting itself was being held in person. A glass-walled boardroom on the 17th floor of the client's headquarters. Full panoramic view of the city skyline, big enough to fit the entire food chain from both companies. Our side had senior execs, 2 project managers, 1 product owner, and of course Heather, our fearless plagiarist-in-chief. The client's side came heavy. Nathan, the CTO, his direct reports, and half their logistics team. All suits, all sharp-eyed, all expecting brilliance. Heather arrived last. I saw it through the shared webcam feed someone forgot to disable. The camera was angled slightly, showing just enough of the boardroom to see her entrance. She strutted in like she was walking a Fashion Week runway. Black blazer with gold buttons, sleek folder in hand, hair flat-ironed into weapon-grade precision. She looked like a leader. She acted like a leader. That was her real superpower, not intelligence, not innovation. The performance of competence. She wore it like perfume. She shook hands, gave that tight-lipped corporate smile, and started setting up her laptop like she'd built the damn hardware herself. I sat frozen, watching from the sidelines like a ghost haunting her own murder scene. My inbox was open, Gmail in one tab, GitHub in another. Still no read receipt from Nathan. Still no reply. My email sat there in digital purgatory, waiting to be seen, waiting to matter. At 9:02 a.m., the meeting officially started. Heather's voice came through the conference mic, crisp and confident. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. We're excited to walk you through Aurora Flow, our logistics automation platform designed specifically for Henderson's operations. It's been a long journey, and I'm proud to share the outcome. Long journey, huh? You mean my journey? The one where I bled time and sanity into a system that doesn't even carry my name anymore? She clicked to the first slide, the system overview. Diagram I drafted at 3 a.m. during a Red Bull crash and later color-coded because the PM said it looked too much like a subway map. It was still mine. I recognized the node names, even the ones she didn't understand. The room nodded along. People scribbled notes. One guy even smiled. She had them. She was selling it. Selling me. Slide after slide, her voice stayed steady, practiced. This decision tree allows for warehouse rerouting in real time, she said, pointing to logic I'd spent weeks refining. We tested the scaling module under 4 different failure conditions. She added, quoting from my QA logs. You'll notice how the ETL pipeline prioritizes perishables based on shelf life and regional demand, a feature I'd coded after Henderson's test batch of strawberries rotted in Phoenix last summer. And they bought it, all of it. For 20 minutes, she presented my work like a bedtime story she'd authored, and I just sat there, headphones on, heart thudding like a warning siren. I couldn't move, I couldn't type, I just listened, watched, waited. Then she reached the live demo. This part speaks for itself, she said, launching the interface. She clicked through the dashboard like she was conducting an orchestra, never once acknowledging she didn't write a single note of the music. My buttons, my flows, my alerts. I could practically hear the soft hum of my scripts firing in the background. Applause followed, polite, measured, but real. I wanted to scream, to stand up and shout, "You're clapping for a puppet show," and I built the strings. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, because the roller coaster wasn't done. The climb was over, sure, but I knew we were almost at the drop. Heather clicked to the slide titled Operational Efficiencies, Post-Deployment Gains, and I nearly vomited into my keyboard. It wasn't just the slide title. It was the exact phrasing from my internal write-up. I remembered writing that sentence while microwaving oatmeal at 1:42 a.m. last quarter, the same night the deployment logs caught a conflict in the RIDI's cache layer, and I patched it blind on 2 hours of sleep and blind faith. She didn't change a single word, not even the colon. Now she was reading it aloud like it was her personal TED moment. Post-deployment analytics show a 46% reduction in fulfillment latency across high-volume SKUs and a 22% drop in manual inventory overrides, she announced with that smug little pause after the numbers, like she just summoned a spell. Like she understood what any of that meant. She didn't. I knew she didn't. She once asked me, can we just, skip the whole retry cycle thing? It sounds negative. Retry cycle. Very thing that made our backend resilient enough to survive their Colorado warehouse losing power twice in February. And yet there she stood, riding the wave of nods and polite admiration from execs who didn't know any better. Nathan, the CTO, sat at the far end, arms folded, stoic, his expression unreadable. I stared at him through the tiny webcam feed, begging him with my eyes, did you open it? Did you read the email? No sign. Nothing. Heather kept talking. Of course, what makes Aurora Flow uniquely tailored to Henderson's supply model is its predictive routing logic. We modeled it on historical backorder data and perishability curves. I flinched. Those words. Those exact words. I wrote them in a design note 6 months ago, after a 3-hour call with Henderson's inventory team, where they offloaded so much raw data, I had to use my bathtub as a whiteboard just to track edge cases. She hadn't even been on that call. She was in Napa that week doing a Women in Tech panel, which, let's be honest, was just Chardonnay and Canva slides. But now, here she was, quoting my brain like it was some episode she binged last night. Nausea curled in my stomach like a pulled thread in a sweater, small at first, but unraveling fast. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, useless. My ears buzzed with white noise as her voice droned on. I tried not to look at the other executives nodding along, but I caught glimpses. Our VP of sales, smiling like a proud parent, the product lead, scribbling notes like she just discovered fire. Even our CEO, who hadn't said a single word yet, leaned forward at one point and said, "That's sharp work, Heather," and I sat there. Silent, anonymous, disposable. I glanced again at my Gmail tab. Still no reply. The GitHub link remained unopened. My heart thumped out a frantic message. It's not enough. They don't care. They're going to let her steal everything and call it synergy. I almost shut the laptop. Almost, but something in me held still, held fast, because I knew the truth was there, waiting. I had built it into the architecture, into the system, into the very bones of the thing, and even if no one saw it yet, it existed. It lived. Heather wrapped up her final slide with a flourish. In short, Aurora Flow isn't just smart tech. It's empathetic design for people, for processes, for purpose. Someone actually clapped at that line. I dug my nails into my palm so hard I left half-moon bruises. That was the ordeal. Watching my identity be worn like a costume. Listening to my thoughts exit someone else's mouth, powerless to stop it. Trapped behind a screen, my only weapon a hope that one curious CTO had bothered to click a link. I stared at Nathan again, still unreadable, still quiet. Then he leaned forward, reached for his laptop. And for the first time in 37 agonizing minutes, he smiled. Not at Heather, at the screen. The room had just begun that awful, polite clapping, the kind that fills boardrooms when no one wants to be the first to stop smiling. Heather basked in it like it was her birthright, hands folded across her laptop, radiating smug satisfaction. She looked around as if expecting a standing ovation and maybe a corner office with a view. But Nathan didn't clap. He just reached calmly into his leather bag, pulled out his laptop, and plugged it into the HDMI port at the head of the table. The room stilled. Heather blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, is there something?" Nathan waved her off with a courteous, "Just want to share something before we move forward." And just like that, the big screen, where seconds ago my stolen diagrams had floated like gospel, switched to his desktop. He opened Chrome, then GitHub, then he pasted a link into the address bar. My link, my damn link. The same one I sent him in that quiet, careful email. The one I had almost deleted a dozen times before pressing send. The one I was sure had been lost forever in the sea of calendar invites and vendor spam. I stopped breathing. I actually stopped breathing. The page loaded. Public repo, plain and clean. Project name, Henderson Aurora Flow Internal Logic. Commits tab, click, and there it was. Line after line of timestamp commits, 2 years worth. Feature branches, unit tests, rollback patches, emergency hotfixes, Q3 optimization notes. All of it, all mine, my username on every single one. Like a heartbeat, steady and undeniable. He scrolled slowly. Let the silence stretch. Fascinating trail, he said, almost casually. Every update, every architecture shift. Notes on scalability, even the initial migration scripts. He glanced around the room. Looks like this repository has been in active development for roughly, he tapped a few keys, 730 days. Consistently authored by the same contributor. The CTO turned to Heather. Calm, not angry, not accusatory, just devastatingly direct. Can you explain that? Heather's smile froze mid-lip curl. She stared at the screen like it was showing her browser history instead of GitHub. Her lips parted slightly, but nothing came out. Nathan didn't wait for her to speak. He turned to the room. I just found this link in my inbox, he said. Sent a few days ago, labeled as additional documentation. Didn't look important at first, but I opened it this morning out of curiosity. Spent the better part of the last 2 hours going through it. He looked at me. Not Heather, me. Then he nodded. No words, no dramatic declaration, just a nod. Simple, absolute. My breath came back in pieces. I could feel my pulse again. My hands were shaking just a little, just enough to notice. I looked back at the screen. There it was. Truth plain as code. No opinions, no spin, just cold, beautiful proof. The kind that doesn't need explanation. The kind that doesn't need permission. Heather tried to recover. That's, I mean, of course. We draw from team contributions. I delegate implementation to technical staff as part of my leadership strategy. It's collaborative, Nathan raised a brow. Every single line, her face twitched. I mean, she laughed nervously. We're all working toward the same goal, right? It's not about credit, it's about delivering value, no disagreement there, Nathan said, turning back to the screen. But if I'm making strategic decisions based on a system, I want to know who actually understands it. Who can build it, break it, fix it? He looked at me again like I was a person, not a resource, not a shadow. I prefer working with the architect, he said. My screen blurred with tears I didn't let fall. Not here, not yet. For the first time in 2 years, someone saw the whole of what I built, and it was standing tall in the light with my name right where it belonged. The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. Heather didn't speak. Couldn't. Her face, usually locked in that Botox serenity, was suddenly very human. Too human. Pale, twitchy, flushed high on the cheeks like she'd just run a marathon in 4-inch heels. Her hands fluttered over her laptop like she was trying to find the eject button on her career. Nathan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He stood beside the screen, calm as a surgeon, gesturing toward the glowing wall of commits. Each line a quiet, undeniable indictment. My name beside every feature, every fix. The screen didn't blink. The data didn't lie. Can you explain this? He asked again, tilting his head slightly like a teacher asking a student why the dog keeps eating their homework. Heather cleared her throat, twice, then tried on a smile that didn't quite fit her face anymore. Yes, of course. This repository reflects implementation. Tactical builds, but leadership isn't just commits and code. It's about vision. I've been driving the strategy behind, Nathan cut in gently, you've been driving the strategy behind predictive perishability algorithms based on demand modeling? She blinked. Yes. Well, not the math itself. That was delegated. I provided the framework. The mission. The mission, Nathan echoed. Fascinating, because what I see here is not just implementation. I see notes explaining every design pivot. I see a/b test logs. I see rollback criteria that were built from real failure conditions. He turned back to the boardroom, addressing the others now. See this line? He pointed at one commit. Updated cold chain escalation thresholds warehouse Phoenix outage. That's from 8 months ago. Timestamped 3 hours after our Southwest hub reported a freezer failure. And this one, he scrolled. The rerouting algorithm for high-priority perishables pushed the same night our strawberries rotted in bulk. He paused. I remember that week. The failure cost us nearly $300,000, but someone was up that night fixing it, then came the final blow. This, he said, gesturing broadly, is the work of someone who knows this system in their bones. Someone who bled into it. Someone who cares whether or not it collapses. I don't care what title they have. That's the person I trust. The room didn't gasp. This wasn't a movie, but the energy shifted, like a glacier cracking in slow motion. Heather opened her mouth, closed it. Her throat made a dry, clicking sound. She looked at our execs, our CEO, our VP of sales, the product lead, but no one made eye contact. Not anymore. The applause from earlier, already a memory. Greg from marketing, the one who once said I had resting slack face, glanced down at his notes like maybe they could swallow him whole, and I just sat there. Still, whole, not smug. Not angry anymore. What I felt was clean. like someone had scrubbed off the last 2 years of humiliation and left behind a bright, blank space where I could finally breathe. Heather tried one last Hail Mary. "We're all part of the same team," she said, her voice cracking like a cheap plastic fork. "It's not about individual credit, it's about delivering impact." Nathan gave a single nod. "You're absolutely right. It is about impact." Then he turned to the CEO. "I'd like to have a private word after this, about project continuity and leadership." And just like that, Heather was done, not with a bang, with a quiet redirect, a polite corporate execution. She sat back in her chair, lips pinched, staring straight ahead as if she might still will herself invisible. But it was too late, because the commits glowed behind her like courtroom evidence. And my name, it was the only one on them. Ethan turned from the screen and looked across the room, past Heather, past our so-called leadership team, past the polite silence now hanging like fog, and locked eyes with me. Not through a laptop, not through a Slack ping or a project ticket. Directly, "My name," he said. The room turned with him. He said it plainly, without drama, without performance. "My new PO is in your inbox." For a second, no one breathed, not even me. Then came a ripple, not a cheer. Not applause, but something quieter and far more seismic. A collective shift in gravity. A handful of gasps muffled behind polite hands. Someone's pen rolled off the table and clattered to the floor. Chairs creaked as bodies leaned back, stunned into stillness. Heather didn't move. Her face was frozen, white as the tablecloth, mouth slightly open like she'd short-circuited, like she'd just heard her own eulogy spoken in a stranger's voice. I opened my inbox with trembling fingers. There it was. Subject, offer letter Aurora Flow engagement direct signed, time-stamped, drafted the night before. Meaning Nathan had already made his decision before walking into that room. He didn't come here to see the system. He came to crown its creator. I sat there, still as stone. No smile, no gloating, just full, not angry, not relieved. Just whole in a way I hadn't felt in years. All that noise. Sleepless nights, the imposter syndrome, the bitterness, the invisible labor, it went quiet. Heather was still blinking like someone had unplugged her brain. Greg from marketing shifted in his seat like he wanted to slide under the table and disappear. Our VP of sales reached for his coffee, missed, and pretended it didn't matter. And me, I stood up, calm, unhurried. Nathan nodded again. "We'll be working directly with you moving forward. Clean handoff, full credit." Heather twitched at the word credit. No one said anything else. They didn't need to. Justice had been done, not with shouting, not with scandal, but with proof, with patience, with a quiet line of commits that spoke louder than 1,000 slide decks. I closed my laptop, packed it neatly into my bag, and as I walked out of the room, no fanfare, no backslaps, I passed behind Heather. She didn't look at me. Couldn't, but I said one thing, low enough for only her to hear. It was about impact. "You just never had any." Then I left. No burnouts, no vengeance monologue, just sunlight, my name on the work I built, and a clean inbox with a future inside. And somewhere behind me, the sound of a glass empire quietly cracking. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.